interested in talking about share. Okay, now what's the title of this? Shame.
Sharing without shame?
There you go. Sharing without shame. So here we are. Thank you all for joining us. I have a guest with me. Her name is Donna, and she and I have collaborated here to share with you some uh, chats, some discussions, some info on what it entails to share without shame. And these discussions, these are the Resilient Soul series discussion. And we talk about self awareness, self acceptance, self care, and some of the other crucial aspects of self love. However, we don't always put it into practice.
Hmm.
And there are times when shame takes over, fear takes over, things take over. And I wanted to invite Donna here to join us today so that we can talk about sharing without shame. Now, she is a mother who intimately understands the challenges of loving a child in an act of addiction. And so today our topic is going to focus somewhat around addictions. And I'd like for you to share, Donna, a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from when it comes to healing without shame. So take the floor.
Okay, so my journey started when I found out that my teenage son was in active addiction.
Mm,
And when I suspected for a long time, and then I found out, you know, things started to happen, the consequences started to happen. And then when he turned 20, it just went a mess. And
mm,
um, for me, it brought me to my knees. My heart was broken. I didn't understand addiction because I didn't grow up around it. And
mm,
um, so I just, basically for, he used for 10 years. The last five were horrific. And so for those 5 years, I thought I could love him into recovery. I found out the hard way that I couldn't. I did everything to rescue and save him. He became my drug of choice. I was addicted to rescuing him.
mm,
And, and my life became unmanageable, just like his. You know,
mm,
I find we mimic each other's behaviors I was the unhealthy helper. And so 2 years before he found his recovery, I hit my enough. And that's when
mm,
we're able to change. I finally hit my enough when I realized I saw an emotional scale and I was number 22. I was full of despair. I was depressed. I forget what else was on there, but it was a lot. And I just remember thinking, oh my God, how did I get to this? How did I
mm,
learn to live in dysfunction? I'm not a dysfunctional person. And in that pivotal moment, something clicked, and I knew I had to start to take my power back. And I
mm.
slowly learned self care. And it took a long time to learn self love. And, all that stuff has built and built on top of each. It's like stepping stones, right? We have
Mhm.
to find our way. And, it's been a journey. I'm a work in progress. I've been working on myself. Started my recovery program from being the unhealthy helper 2 years before him. He's been sober 16 years. So we're talking 18 years. I've been trying to take care of myself and do better. And I've
Yeah.
come a long way. And I think one of the key things, and I learned this, which is interesting, I was in a women's group because I went to spiritual groups instead of like Al-Anon. They just seemed better for me.
Mhm.
And one of the nights they passed a mirror and they said they wanted everybody to look in the mirror and say your first name and then say, my name is Donna. I love you, Donna, I think is what it was.
Mm,
Nobody could do it.
mm. Oh.
Nobody could do it. And And so I practiced that, and it took a long time, you know, but
Yeah.
I practiced it, and you know, it all changed.
Yes. And so through your healing journey and your
Hmm.
struggles,
Hmm.
and your path to resilience and, that transformation that it takes,
Yep.
um, it's a complex path.
It certainly
It,
is.
yeah. And
Bumps and
addiction,
bruises along the way.
right. And I think you mentioned something about your son being in real recovery or active recovery for the past 14 years.
Uninterrupted recovery
Uninterrupted.
for the past 16 years.
There you go. Okay. I liked how you put that, because sometimes there are periods of recovery, but it gets interrupted. And
Absolutely.
so that is the real nuts and
Yep.
bolts of it.
Hmm.
It's getting to that point where it is uninterrupted recovery. And I think that's amazing. Um, and today, you are an author.
I
And so,
am.
yeah, so why don't you tell us about some of your writings?
So my first book is called Peeling the Onion, and it's an interesting story. I wrote it kind of like, you know, at that point I was very connected and just kind of let spirit take me on this journey of let it come through me and let it flow. Whatever happens, happens. And when I had the manuscript done, I showed it to my son. He goes, "Who do you think's going to read this?" And being that insecure person, I was like, "Yeah, who do you think's going to read this?" And I ripped up the manuscript. And then months later, I was speaking at a local hospital at their IOP, intensive outpatient program for people in, you know, they were really struggling and trying to find recovery in their families. And this woman said, "You ought to write a book." And I said, "You know, I did." And one day, months later, I was cleaning out my computer, going through files, and what pops up but the manuscript? Tell me that's not, you know.
Now, see, that just gave me chills.
So that told me, okay, this is meant to be. But when I reread it, I thought, I'm not here to tell my son's story. That's not my place. I can only tell my story. I
Yeah.
rewrote it. And so that was my first book. And it talks about what it felt like to be me, what I learned the hard way. And then I started called Peeling the Onion Facebook page. And
Mm.
I would do it just for today, every day. And next thing I knew, I had 14,000 followers. And I thought, well, maybe
Woo.
this is a book. So I took all of those just for today's for 365 days and I created just for today. And
Yeah.
that's what it is. And I said, I'm never writing a book again. I mean, that's not my jam, you know? Um, and I don't know what happened, but last year I wrote Sharing Without Shame, and Healing Without Shame is a journal that goes with it. The cool thing about Sharing Without Shame is that it has six parents who talk about how they navigated through their child's active addiction. And then I
Mm.
have six people who are in recovery and they talk about how what their pathway to recovery was, and they're all different. And then
Mm.
there's some information of about unhealthy helping versus helping. There's some, you know, information about better coping skills and how we can move forward and information about how we take on a family role and whatever role we take on inadvertently because we're all trying to keep balance in the family. So it's a lot of information in all of them, but Sharing Without Shame is my newest and I think my best. And
Mm.
I'm really proud of it.
Very nice.
Thank
And what I think is neat is that throughout, I think, your own healing journey, you kind of got into some of the modalities for healing yourself
you.
that I
Hmm.
like to share in this Facebook community. And you ended up getting certified in some of these healing modalities.
Yeah,
And so you're a certified recovery support worker,
yeah, I am.
um,
I'm
an
licensed in the state of New Hampshire.
Licensed in the state of New Hampshire. That is neat. You're an energy healing practitioner. Now, is that based on your location or can that be across the board?
Based on my location. I'm not
Okay.
that good to do it.
And then, of course, you are a Reiki master.
I am a Shambhala Reiki master.
Yes, I have heard about it. I have been introduced to it by some people locally and virtually. And that is something that I am interested in exploring sometime. Uh,
Yeah,
I've got this big, long bucket list of
yeah.
modalities that I like to share with my group. We've got a number of people who are popping in and um, on Facebook in the group. So if you guys want to pop in, say hello. We're so glad you are joining us for this discussion. And we're here with Donna, and her mission is to help other parents navigate through that emotional roller coaster of loving a teen or an adult child who is in active addiction. So
Hmm.
I'm really glad that you're here and that people are joining us here on our in the Facebook group and people who might be watching after this gets uploaded into YouTube. Welcome, and we're here for you. And so, one of the things that we talked about as we were preparing for our interview today is that we're talking about how we can take our mess and make it a message.
Absolutely.
And that is, I think, Donna, what you're all about. And I like to kind of expand on that just a little bit. If you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit of information about yourself. I know you said before that you worked through your pain and gradually stopped participating in the drama of your child's addiction.
Hmm.
And I can relate to that 100%. I've had some experience with that, a family addiction, not just children, but siblings. And so it's something that takes a very, um, to me, it takes a pretty calculated approach
Mm.
because if it's haphazard, somehow you just keep falling back in. I went to a counselor one time and she told me that it's like there's this big chasm, this big hole. And when you climb out, if you stand too close to the edge, those that are in that hole are going to try to pull you back in
Mm.
because you're there for them, you're trying to support them, you're doing everything you can for them. And the best way for them to feel good is to kind of pull you back in with them. So you've got to keep a certain amount of distance, but
Hmm.
yet still be there. And is that something that you can speak to based on your experience?
Yeah, and I learned the hard way that I couldn't love my son into recovery. And one of the
Mm,
things when I work with parents is I teach them how to care from a distance. What does that look like? Everybody's different. So, there's no right or wrong way. We all have to find our way, what works for us. That's important. And
hmm
what worked for me may not work for somebody else and vice versa. But there's ways that we can still, not always, but sometimes, that we can still be in our children's lives or loved ones' lives who are unhealthy because they're in active addiction, but we can somehow create a healthier environment or relationship. And it's
mm,
all in how we react to them. And one of the things I've said, like if you go to visit your child in treatment, don't remind them of their addiction or the trouble they're in, and they have to do this and that, they have to do
mm-hmm.
that. That's what I did. I'd go to his treatment facility. You need to get a job. You owe us thousands of dollars. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do, and all they hear is blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had to
Mm,
learn to turn that around. And it happened because a friend said to me, with my son's last treatment facility, I told her he was coming home, and I started in on the stuff. And she
mm,
said, "Why don't you do something different this time?" And I said, "What's that?" She goes, "Why don't you zip your lip and mind your own business and work your own recovery program?" And I was like,
Mm,
ouch. And then I
yeah.
thought, how dare she? She doesn't have children. I'm the mother. Don't tell me how to do this. And I don't know what happened that night, but something happened when I was sleeping, and there was a spiritual shift. There
Mm,
was something that I don't know.
yeah.
And I woke
Wow.
up the next day. I started minding my own business. I started trying to find recovery. I ended up finding Codependence Anonymous, going to their meetings. I started reading Melody Beattie books. Um, I just, I had Reiki, and it was the first time I felt alive in a lot of 4 or 5 years. And I
Mm,
just started putting one foot in front of the other
right.
because I was drowning and I was part of the problem. And I had no clue that I was toxic to my son's recovery because every time he come home, I reminded him of everything he did wrong and what he needed to do.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I know, believe me, I know that that does not work. And being able to step back and let them do their recovery, you do what you need to do
Yeah.
to heal and to move forward. And there it's all about setting those
Hmm.
healthy boundaries.
Healthy. Key word.
That is a key word,
Yep.
because I hear so many times, and you probably in your experience have heard it too. People, parents, siblings of people with addiction issues, they can get downright nasty
Absolutely.
with the person that they're trying to help. And that's not necessary. Setting boundaries doesn't have to be mean and nasty. Healthy boundaries, healthy coping, healthy recovery steps are what it takes, and definitely to your own self too. Once you got over the shock of that, the counselor or the person that was working with you telling you to mind your own business, you might be like me. You go home, you think about that, and you're like, what? She's got a lot of nerve. And then the more you reflect on it and process it, and you think, you know what, she's got a point. And I know when I was struggling with some of the issues my son had, and I was still trying to work, and I was letting a lot of things follow me to work that I didn't even
Sure.
realize.
Hmm.
And someone I trusted very much, that worked with me, he was our behavior specialist. And he took me into his office and he said, Cindy, you are taking all of these problems that aren't yours and you're bringing them to work,
Sure.
and you're going to lose your job.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I didn't realize I wasn't being as effective as I used to be. I don't know. I just was in a bubble, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
And he said, you either pull it together or they're going to ask for your resignation. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
And I'd been in education for about 8 years at that point, and that really woke me up.
Yeah.
And for me, it meant going and getting some support,
Yeah.
getting some counseling. And I did. And it was an eye opener, because not only did some of these techniques that I started using and some of these strategies and this self talk, not only did it help me with the situation, it helped me in a lot of other areas of my life too. It was like a rebirth for me, to get help for me, quit blaming myself for my son's problems and my ex's problems, and all these things. Really just being able to do this journey of ups and downs with without feeling out of control, because for a long time that's what it felt like. Things were just out of my control, and really they're not. I think the key word you said just a few minutes ago is how you react to what's going on around you, whether or not it's healthy. And I like to use the word respond. Learning to respond in a way that is thoughtful, healthy, and proactive. So, it takes time. And I know you've mentioned that it took you years
Mm-hmm.
to heal your broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when you did, you found your voice and your passion. And I just wonder, what can you offer those people who might be listening, and even the people who may tune in, 6 months from now? They are broken. Their heart is broken. And as they're healing, what can you offer them as far as what would be the next best step for them to take? The first step to moving from that shame to being able to share or at least move forward without so much pain.
Well, I think, first it's you have to feel your pain. I think first and foremost, it's important to
Yeah.
feel our pain, and then when we're ready, we can start unpacking it. And when it's baby steps, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, it was years for my son's addiction to build up to be out of control, and it was years for me to build up to be out of control. And so we can't expect it to change in a snap of a finger. It sometimes it's just baby steps. And I remember when I was going through it, knowing I had to start healing. Some days it was a breath at a time
Mm,
because that's all I could manage in the
mm-hmm.
depression. But I think once we get going, and for parents to reach out, my goal is I never want anyone to feel financially or get. I mean, I was financially and emotionally bankrupt.
Mm-hmm. Mm,
What I can do for parents is help them prevent that
yeah.
because I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I now work in the field. Um, so, my goal is to help somebody get through all of this so they never have to feel the way I did or go through it as long, you
Yeah.
know, t- offer them coping skills. One of the things I do with parents, especially if their adult child and even their teenage child lives with them, we do a living agreement. And they make an agreement of this is how we're going to live together. And here's the consequences if you don't abide by the house rules. And I do a
Mm-hmm.
three strikes, you're out. But one of the things I always say is give a good, and I always did this with my kids, even when my son wasn't in active addiction. I gave you a good choice and a choice you're probably not going to like. So with my son, whatever happened, I'd catch him, I don't know, I'd find drug paraphernalia, and I'd say, you know what? You can either go to treatment or I'll drive you down to the local homeless shelter and we'll see if they'll accommodate you. And
Mm.
so you choose what you want. And he always chose treatment because he'd get me off his back. He'd go for 28 days and
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was something because there's seeds being planted every time they go.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully one of the days, one of the times it makes a shift. Thankfully for my son it did, but I think it's those types of things. It's just learning what's going to help the family to come together so everybody's on the same page, because
Mm-hmm.
if every family member's doing different stuff, it's becomes really messy, and then there's internal fighting, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
dysfunction, and nobody's helping anybody, and it's like the crazy train. Who's driving it?
There you go.
I
Yeah.
like to get off.
Yes. And so, it sounds like the first step is really taking time to educate yourself, first of
Yeah.
all, about addiction, and
Hmm.
second of all, about how you can get off that crazy train and support this family member, in a way that is helpful.
And
And
sometimes that helpfulness is caring from a distance, is loving them from a distance.
yeah, yeah. And finding out that it's okay. This is what I think, was my issue that kept me in that turmoil for such a long time. I was afraid if I stepped back too far that he would overdose.
Hmm.
He did at one point. And so I guess that he kind of held me over a barrel because I was afraid that if I didn't get in there and every day be in his business, that he would overdose. And I finally learned that if he did, it's not my fault. That's a hard
And
place to get to.
it takes a long time, but when everything you said was about you. It wasn't really about him. It was your fear
Yeah,
that got in your way and kept you
true.
engaged. And that's what
Yes.
happens. It's our fear and the stinking thinking that goes on up here. My head is
Mm,
my hell.
mm,
I would tell myself all kinds of stories. And if I don't rescue him and pay off his drug dealers, and if I don't do this, he's going to die and it's all my fault.
mm.
That's a heavy load to carry.
It is.
And I, I was in bed 6 months in the fetal position, going through all of that, when nobody
Mm.
was looking.
Yeah, yeah.
And it takes time to get to where you got and where I got, to understand that if my son dies, it has nothing to do with me. And guess what? As 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 much of an unhealthy helper that I was, and paid off his drug dealers and bailed him out of jail and did all this stuff, he overdosed. There were times he overdosed.
Hmm.
I couldn't stop that. And I've had parents, so I ran family support in the state of New Hampshire for over 12 years. I had parents doing drug deals with their kids because they think it's safer for them to use their drugs at home. And guess what? Some of them have woke up and their children are dead in their bed. How's that
Mm.
feel?
Yeah, yeah. Wow.
That's how sick we get,
Hmm.
thinking we can love them into recovery. And if I let them use here, it will be safe.
Mm.
It's not, it's never safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean, and it is scary. It's very scary. And I think what woke me up is going to counseling, trying to get him to go to counseling, but he was such a manipulator that he would tell them all kinds of things, and they'd come out wanting to know what I did as a parent and what his dad did to make him this way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, that was what they said. And I'm like, what on earth did he tell you? And he was so manipulative. And he admits that to this day, that
Mm-hmm.
he was. But I finally got to a counselor that was just for me. And this is what she said: how long have you been rescuing him?
Yeah.
And I didn't call it rescuing, but she asked me the stuff I'd been doing to help.
Yeah.
It had been over 5 years, and it was worse than it was when I started, when all this started. And she said, so Cindy, quit it. You've been rescuing him for 5 years and it hasn't done anything but make things worse.
Yeah. It's like, how's it working out for you?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's,
That's what she said. So, and I think people from the outside can help us see that, because when you're caught up in it, like I said before, you're in a bubble,
you have
and you
blinders
really,
on.
yeah, you have blinders on,
Hmm.
and you need to take those off and realize that it's not in anger or hatred or fear that you take those off. It's in knowledge. And I'm grateful that you have the experience to be able to help people find that knowledge.
Mm.
To go
And
ahead.
sometimes we have to love them enough to let them go,
I know.
because
So
they get
hard.
to live their life the way they choose to live their life. And if doing drugs is the way they want to be, that's the way it is. However, there are times when our children are so sick that there are times we need to step in because they're incapable of helping
Hmm.
themselves.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's figuring that line out. But yeah, yeah, you know what?
yeah.
I wouldn't wish it on my enemy, but I wouldn't change anything in those 10 years, or all these, what, 20 something years, whatever it is,
Hmm.
with him using in recovery, because I've grown so much as a human being and as a mother, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
change any of it for anything, because what we have built and what we've regained. And
Mm,
we restored our relationship, and we restored our mental states, because we all
mm,
get crazy. And there's so many blessings. What do they say? A curse can be a blessing, and a blessing can be a curse. And the curse
mhm,
of addiction almost destroyed my beautiful boy. But in the end, we've been given gifts.
mhm,
My son's a miracle. He's, 16 years sober. He's a businessman. He votes. He has a family,
mhm.
and he pays it forward.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And, there are situations where it doesn't end up that way.
Yep.
But what you said is there are still clouds of beauty and things that come out of it when you set boundaries and you're able to love them in a healthy way.
Hmm.
It really does. When you said that you were able to, I can't remember the words you did, but reconfigured your relationship,
Hmm.
with all of that to inform your future relationship with your son, and that's a beautiful thing. So as we're getting ready to wind up this discussion, if there's people that are listening that would like to connect with you, we are going to put some links in the show notes, so to speak, and down in the comments. And how can people reach you, and what might be the first step for them to connect with you, if they would like to get more information about your books, or how you can help them?
Well, all my books are on Amazon, but they can
Okay.
also buy them on my website. My website is www.sharingwithoutshame.com. And they can email me at Donna, Donna, the number four, and the word support at Comcast.net. So Donna for support at Comcast.net. I have a podcast called Sharing Without Shame. I have a Facebook page, Sharing Without Shame, and I also have a free Facebook page for parents to join called Family Sharing Without Shame. I think there's
Mm,
258 members, and they get, all you have to do is say, "Hey, I'm sick and suffering. I'm going through this," and whoever has been going through it, they'll reach out, and now you have support. Because when I did my meetings, and unfortunately COVID took all that away, one of the things we'd end with was always the serenity prayer. And after we said this, we all stood and held hands. And after the serenity prayer, we'd say, "I put my hand in yours so together we can do what I no longer need to do alone."
there you go. I
So I
like
put my
that.
hand out, and if people reach for it, I'll take a hold on it.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing from the heart. And I know that you also, and we're going to put that link down below too. They are welcome to touch base with you. Have
Oh, absolutely.
a free 15-minute discovery call,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll give them that information. And I definitely want to get the link for your group, because I didn't realize that you had a Facebook community for parents. So anyway, thank you again for sharing, for being so open, and for taking the shame out of having a sibling or a son or a family member with addiction.
Right.
I really appreciate that. And to me, that title, Sharing Without Shame, says it all.
Thank
So,
you.
those of you that have joined us, thank you for joining us. And we're praying for you and thinking about you if you happen to be in a situation where this all hits a little too close to home. And we're here for you. And we will, like I said, share the links, and hopefully we'll be someone that can help you on your next step. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to say goodbye, and we'll touch base later. I'm pretty sure this won't be the last time that we have Donna join us. All right. Bye bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.